Hello, Smart Marty's broadcast listeners. Welcome to this week's show. My name is Kirk Chisholm, and I'll be your host. So today, I'm joined with Shellee Howard. How you doing today, Shellee?
Outstanding, Kirk. Great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you in the show. So for those of you who don't know you, maybe you could tell listeners a little bit about your background.
I would be happy to do so. I am a mother of four, and I think it's important that I put that up there first because I was a mom on a mission. My firstborn came home from middle school and said, Mom, I know exactly what I want to do after high school. And I'm like, really? Because I changed my major 5 times and I didn't quite do it that well. Very simply, he states, I want to be a brain surgeon and go to an Ivy League school. And I then started paying attention because that was a big ask. So he was my reason. It's been 18 years, and he is now an orthopedic surgeon via Harvard, UC San Diego, and UCLA. I have three others that have all done college as well, and all four have graduated with zero debt, and I didn't pay a dime.
Wow, that's a pretty good testament there. So what is it you do now? Like, tell us, like, how did you get into the college space?
So it really started at my son's high school graduation, and a young man sitting next to me says, Dude, I didn't even know that kid was smart. And he was talking about my son. And then everybody started asking me, Well, how did he do it? How did he get into 7 full ride offers? Was it a sport? What was it? And I started to really lean into families and help them on top of my full-time career at the time. But what I did is I went back to school and I got my master's degree. And then I went back to school and I became a certified independent college consultant, started touring 25 colleges a semester. And for the last 18 years, I help students figure out who they are, their gifts, their talents, their advocacy, find the best fit college, and help them navigate how to do it with a return on investment of time and money so they get to their career and ready to go.
So let's talk a little bit about why somebody like you exists. So tell me about I mean, because these schools have guidance counselors. Like, why wouldn't you just use a guidance counselor?
So I love that question. Well, that's exactly what I did when my son came to me. I'm like, oh, I know what to do. I made an appointment with this high school guidance counselor and I said, okay, you tell me what you tell her what you told me. And he says, well, I want to be a brain surgeon. I want to go to an Ivy League school. And she says, why? They don't make money anymore. And he looked at me like, well, that was kind of rude. And then I looked at her like, did you really say that out loud? And then that was it. He, at this point, he had been like, well, obviously she's not going to be on my team. Mom, will you help me? And that's when I really started to dive in. Now, he did the work. I just guided him along the path. So why am I different or how am I different? College Ready is unique in the fact that first, we meet with your student one to one on a consistent basis starting as early as middle school. Some people don't even think about it until freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, and some senior year. So the beauty of that is we can help your student wherever they're at in the process. And what we do is uniquely different. We help them figure out who they are, what they want to major in, what type of career will AI be doing it, how much education they'll need, what will be their college list, how will they navigate, how will they get accepted, what are their activities, honors, and awards, what is their GPA, test scores, community service, leadership, extracurriculars, letters of recommendation, and essays. For those of you who think that your high school counselor is going to do all of that, I want you to ask them if they're going to do all of that. And then ask them how they're going to save your family money. And if they ask you, we don't even know how much you can or can afford, that should probably be your first indicator that they don't care about your money or you going into debt or getting you scholarships. So we do the entire process. What's happening right now in schools that are overcrowded, or basically any school, is the high school counselor is also the one helping students who are social or emotionally depressed or anxious. They're helping the kids who don't want to go to school show up and not be truant. They're dealing with the hard things of the teenage generation. I focus on helping your child be successful. That's all I get to do. And that's as often as we need to meet.
So yeah, so when we look at college, there's a lot of challenges that come into play, and you've named a bunch of them, right? And college is a complicated process. So the financial part is part of it, right? You have to be able to afford college or willing to afford college. Um, and there's certainly opportunities to pay less for college. There's finding the right school. Like, how do you find the right school? And, then there's getting yourself primed for the right school, which has gotten a lot more challenging than when I went.
Yep.
Um, and then there's just navigating all the nuances of things that are important that you don't realize are important. So if you kind of look at all that, that's a big bite for a parent, especially who hasn't been through it before and is freaking out. What's the first thing they should focus on? And when should they start? Let's start that. Like, when should they start, and what's the first thing they should focus on?
So such an important question. I have parents who call me when they're pregnant and say, "Hey, we're ready. Let's start a plan." And I'm like, "Okay, whoa, whoa, whoa. Don't quite need to start there yet." I'm not a financial advisor, and so I don't handle any of that early type of thing. But what I do tell families up until seventh grade, the best thing you can do for your child is help them to fall in love with reading. Intellectual curiosity will help them not only do well in high school, but do well in life and help them to balance, inside, outside. In other words, do an extracurricular activity, not just academia. And then when it comes to college preparation, you want to be thinking of, are they mature enough to have this discussion? Because the first thing you want to do is help them to figure out who they are and what matters to them and what they've been given as their gifts and talents and their core values. Because if you start anywhere else, you're just putting a round peg in a square hole. So we start with who is the student, and if they don't know, we need to help them figure it out, and that's what we do. Then, when they have started to really understand, we need them to prove it. If they want to be a doctor, what have they done to prove it? If they want to be a lawyer, an engineer, if they want to be whatever that is, they need to have a standout strategy. They can't just go to a school and apply with a GPA and a test score. That no longer is acceptable or going to get them in. So we need to help them get very, very clear about what is the amount of rigor, the academic weighted classes, what test they will take and when they will take it. So all of this really launches in middle school. Depending on the student, if you have multiple kids, you know that they're all going to mature at different times. But I have some seventh graders in my program who honestly are more mature than seniors. And I have vice versa. So I I give a 30-minute free complimentary conversation with the student and the parent to see, is the student ready to have these discussions? If they're not, it just means that they may need more community service, may need more leadership, may just need more time. But when it gets critical, is the summer going into their freshman year of high school. That is the most underutilized time of their high school career that actually matters to colleges. That is their kickoff send-off, if you will. Every class they take from that moment will build their GPA. Every test they take will build their test score. Every service hour will build their service, so on and so forth. So the longer the runway, the better. There's no downside to helping our child get ready to adult. College is a stepping stone. It's not the end game, but we need to help them to be successful so they'll have opportunity to be with the right students and the right alumni and the right university, and picking the right list of colleges to apply to is not only very challenging, but it could cost you dearly if you don't do it well.
Yeah, I think that's important context. I find it hard because most families, I mean, I've got a 13 and 15-year-old, and my 15-year-old's a sophomore, and I'm looking at this thinking, oh crap, like I'm behind the eight ball already. I know some of these families started when their kids were 5 years old, and my kid's 15, I'm way behind. How am I ever going to get my kid into the school he should get into because we didn't start early enough. So I know it's kind of a constant challenge with parents, and you feel like you're a bad parent if you don't get your kid into an Ivy League school, and like, oh, how am I going to survive the social circles of all his friends? There's a lot that's wrapped into the college process, emotions and social standing and all that. Um, you know, College has changed a lot since I was a kid. How can parents think about the process of college? Because on the other side of it, I'm also thinking, is it even worth paying for? What's the ROI? Is paying $500,000 for college worth getting an extra 5 grand a year in my kid's first job? Probably not. So like, I don't know. I mean, I guess my question is how can parents disentangle this and not necessarily feel overwhelmed by it all when there's so much pulling at them if they want to get their kid into a good school?
So, first, let's break down what is a good school. A good school is one in which your child will attend, be academically challenged, learn how to collaborate, get more intelligent, be ready for the next step. Remember, if they want to be a doctor, a lawyer, a CPA, an engineer, whatever that profession is, it may not be a choice. If they want to do that, they must attend college. So you can look at it from two perspectives. If you're an entrepreneur, it's easy to think, well, maybe just not send them to college. The beauty is when I asked them, great, show me your business plan, they said, I don't know how to build a business plan. And then we get back to, well, how are you going to learn that? So there's some things that people want to just be frustrated and be like, well, I don't want to do this, so I'll do that. Or a student meets with me and they say, I just want to be an influencer. It's just so easy to be online and people throw money at me. And then I go back to what's the longevity of that career? Will AI be doing that? These kids don't know. And to be honest, most adults don't know where AI is going to jump in. I can tell a student right now in 4 years if AI will be doing the career that they want to do. I don't want them to go to college to be this major, to do this thing, to spend their time and their money if it's not even going to be available. So, helping students really get clarity about what they want. Do they want to live at home for the rest of their life? Do they want to live on their own? Do they want to live in the same neighborhood that they grew up in? Do they know how much it costs to live in that neighborhood? I have students who get on calls with me all the time, and when I tell them that career is going to make them 20,000, they're like, "Yes, that is amazing. I'm so pumped." And I'm like, "That is not going to give you the lifestyle you just told me you wanted." So the lack of financial literacy is part of the problem of why people go into debt. And it's happened for generations and generations. People went into college not knowing what they wanted to do, so they picked a major based on something. Then they took on debt because they didn't know any other way. And then they married debt, and now they're double debted. And now they're thinking, well, college is stupid. Well, I want families to reverse engineer that and think, okay, if I didn't do all of this, what would my life look like? I'm not here to sell college. I'm here to sell adulting. But nobody understood when I was trying to help families adult their children. When I bring up college, it's a stepping stone into their future. If we parent properly, they're going to be amazing adults with or without college, depending on what they want, trade school, whatever. But here's the thing. if you don't prepare them and they wake up their junior or senior year in high school and and they say, I really want to be a physical therapist or a psychologist or whatever that is. And now you have to tell them, I'm sorry, you didn't prepare your grades, your test score, community service, leadership, extracurricular, because we weren't going to go down that path. And now they're frustrated. They feel like they've messed up instead of doing all of this wonderful things to prepare them for adulthood. Doing community service is a way for them to step in and try something that they may not try otherwise. And they're helping another human being. Extracurriculars gives them balance of life. It teaches them, teamwork and leadership and all these other wonderful things. It's not for college. So everybody thinks that we're putting all this pressure on our children for college, but really all we're doing is asking them to prepare for adulthood. So I like parents to think about it in a different way. College is a business. You want your child at that business. That business needs your money to stay in business. Now all the emotion is gone. There's no badge of honor. There's no I did it right or I did it wrong. It's simply, how do I set my child up for adulting success? So, Kirk, I hope that kind of gave a different perspective.
Yeah, no, I think it was great. And I think you bring up a really great point, which is, if I think about my experience, I always knew what I wanted to do. Um, Even though I didn't, but I always was very confident by direction. It was going to be in business. And as I got closer, realized what kind of business and ended up in this business. But at the time, um, I generally knew directionally where I wanted to go. Most people, virtually everybody that I was in college with, had absolutely no idea what they wanted to do. And so I find it hard that we're putting kids in a position at 18 years old to make life decisions with an enormous amount of money, um, when they're clearly not ready to do so.
Mhm.
And so, the struggle I have with it is great. You're acquiring all this. Some kids are great. They know all this. They know what they want to be. That's awesome. Most kids don't. And they go to college. They spend $500,000 at college to figure themselves out. And there's lots of ways to do that that don't cost $500,000. But most kids aren't ready at a young age. I mean, I think of my kids, like one's a sophomore. He's not ready to be thinking about this. He's enjoying himself. Like, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? I mean, we are talking about it and it's starting to come up, but like nowhere near the, hey, I did this, then I did this, then I did this. Here's what I want to be when I grow up. And I did all these things since I was 5 years old. Most kids aren't that. So, how can a normal everyday kid that doesn't have their life mapped out for them since birth figure out, um, the right school and the right path and not spend an obnoxious amount of money for well, let's just hope they figure it out. That's kind of an expensive guess. So
I agree.
how can most people kind of take that leap and not have to have everything mapped out and figured out? Because a lot of kids just aren't compliant. They're just like, I just want to go where my friends are going, and you want them to continue to learn. You want to have a college degree so they can get a job. They don't know what they want to be when they grow up, and that's okay. So how can most people address this without having to be, crazy FOMO people that you got to keep up with the Joneses?
So, first is mindset, and that mindset is I want my child to be happy now and in their future. What does that look like? Is teaching them how to lean into their core values, helping them to really step into the things that they are gifted and talented. I remember watching my son play soccer at an early age, and we knew very quickly that he was not going on a full ride scholarship. There were kids who were just absolutely gifted, and that was not his thing. So when you see your child step into something, They're good with numbers. They're good at, working in the child care department. They're really good at doing math in their head. Whatever their thing is, encourage them and let them know this is incredibly you. This is something you've been gifted at. It doesn't mean that's what they're going to do their career, but it's going to give them confidence to try the next thing. Parents that are listening, wouldn't you have loved if somebody would have given you time to talk about your core values, your gifts, your talents, your advocacy, helped you to understand what passions you have and what you can do to make a difference in the world? Can you imagine adulting with 200 service hours under your belt where you have actually made an impact and know that you have something to contribute? If you allow your child to sit on their gaming or TV or computer or social media, and that's what's absorbing them, they're comparing themselves to everybody's best day. Back gone are the days we would go out onto the street until the lights came on and you knew you were fast or slow. You knew you were good at this game or you weren't. You knew you were good at braiding hair or you weren't. Like we tested our skills. But here's the thing. Everybody's so busy that we're not taking the time to speak with students about the things that are important to them. And if there is zero, that's even more of a tragedy. That means that we need to lean in harder and say, what about trying this? I don't expect you. We call it failing forward in our house. I don't expect you to be good at everything. But if we don't try it, how are we not going to know? I took my son to Kenya, Africa, to prove to myself and himself that he had a servant's heart before he went to medical school. This is how we help our children as we give them opportunity to test the water, to learn about themselves, to learn about others, to collaborate, to educate, and not just chill. Chilling is not going to help these kids get any closer to their future. Not intensely. Service should be something that they love to do with the people they want to do it with. This is where the disconnect comes from when people say, but how will they know? Well, if they don't do any of this stuff, they won't. If they don't do an internship, they won't. If they don't know somebody doing that job, they won't. But if you stay in the, it's not right, it's not fair, they won't, you're right. It's like planning for retirement when you're 70. It just doesn't work out well. We need to help these kids figure out who they are, what they want to contribute, and their gifts and talents. So when an adult says, what do you want to be when you grow up? They don't hover or shrug and feel not worthy to answer that. Otherwise, they can say, well, I'm trying this and I'm trying that, and I'm hoping that it's going to come together. But at least they have something to lean forward into versus to lean back from.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So one thing I struggle with because I don't think college is worth the cost. I mean, some are more expensive than others, obviously. Um, but I think most of them aren't worth the cost. And I struggle with the fact that I have to pay for this. My kids won't appreciate it. It's just one big party. Maybe they'll appreciate it, but if college costs 10 grand, that's one thing. You can pretty much get a college degree online for free. So you're comparing $500,000 to send a kid to college to get a diploma, or they can learn everything they want online for free. Um, Everyone can. So what's the value of college? And then I think about, you know, um, what is the value of the name of the college versus the education that you get? Because some schools like Harvard and MIT, whatever, have big names.
Mhm.
And I think we can all agree if you got in there, you send your kids, you pay whatever cost because the degree, the connections will be worth that amount of money. I think so. But where do you think the line is in terms of name recognition versus actual quality of education compared to like the value of the quality that you're paying?
So the first question you asked was the value. And I will tell you, after putting four through college with zero debt and I didn't pay a dime, I think the value is insane. My ROI knocked it out of the park, right? But I did all of the preparation to do that. If you don't want to do the preparation, then you're not going to get that, right? It's like if I come to you and I want a job, but I don't have a resume. If I come to you and I have 4 pages of resume, you're going to pay me a lot of money because I'm going to make you a lot of money. That's what college is all about. College is a business. And as soon as parents start really thinking about, would I bring this child, would I bring my kid into business and give them scholarships? Have they earned it? Or have they taken the easy way and not earned it? And then to your second point is, well, 1.5, there are 10 universities that are completely tuition free. So now the return on investment, again, significantly phenomenal. Then we get into the Harvard versus the others. Since my first went to Harvard, then UC San Diego Medical School, then UCLA Orthopedics, I can speak to Harvard and the publics, two totally different types of education, both of them outstanding for what he wants. That's going to bring me to my next point. Because my daughter wanted to be a nurse, she chose the best nursing school, which was University of Alabama, not Yale. She didn't need Yale to be a nurse with children. So we had to match what she wanted with her education. Number 3 says, I have no clue what I want to do. I've done all the work and I still don't know. Great. He chose a local San Francisco State. He got no debt, got out in 3 years, and he's doing phenomenal. He's a paramedic. Number 4 wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I got to deal with, what does that look like? And she didn't like school. What she wanted to do was travel. So we prepared her. She ended up going 3 years, getting a dual US and European business degree from the Czech Republic of Prague at American Anglo University. Again, it's not one school is best for everyone. It's what does your child need and want to get where they want to go. That is the huge differentiator when you decide, is it a good return on investment? Because I agree with you. To send my child to NYU to be a botanist makes zero sense to me. But I'm not the parent. I can only help them to see the return on investment for a botanist at NYU doesn't make sense. They get to decide how they spend their money. But we do talk about in our program, I have many families who hire me just to talk to their child about this exact subject. They don't have the financial literacy to understand they can't even take out a loan without a cosigner. This is a really critical thing. Families are like, oh, I'll just let my 17-year-old figure it out. Would you let them plan for your retirement, buy you a home, buy you a car? Heck no. They need you. They need your wisdom. But just know you don't have to go into debt if you want to go to college. That is what I want your listeners to understand.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I'm surprised there are 10 colleges that are tuition free. It sounds like you kind of thread the needle quite a bit. Um, and I get where you're coming from. And I think the hard thing as a parent is thinking about, let's say you have the money, right, and you can pay it, or at least you have enough. You can pay you can pay the monthly bills, maybe not all in one chunk, but you can pay the monthlies. And you think about it, it's like, well, as a parent, I'm always thinking about what is the biggest safety net I can provide my kid, right? And this is a subconscious thing. I'm only actually verbalizing it right now. But what's the biggest safety net I can give my kid? If I put my kid in the best position to succeed, then it's up to them. But if I send my kid to a community college versus Yale, there's obviously a big difference in potential outcomes. And as a parent, I'd be willing to pay for Yale because at the worst case, well, he went to Yale, so maybe someone will give him a chance because they know he's not a dummy, right? Because there's that mix because I actually heard a great talk on this a while ago, and they said, well, that was the real purpose of college is to show that you can put in the work and it prepares you. So when you talk to an employer, they said, oh, well, you figured out college, so you could obviously do this job. And I found that to be fascinating because I never thought about it. But like, that's really what it is. It's just to know that you can actually get up at a certain time, you could do the work reliably, you take a test, get results, and okay, you pass. So you're at least adequate in that department versus
Mhm.
someone who didn't go and you're like, well, I don't know. Have you ever been through something hard before? So you know, I still find it challenging because as a parent, if I'm looking to give my kid the best chance of success, I'm still looking at the name as the last resort. Um, because I know you can go to grad school and do all that, but it's still a challenge as a parent to figure all this stuff out. How can people, what would you say as we kind of like wrap it up here, some like final thoughts here, like how can people be thinking about college differently? What are some directions you can, um, some maybe, directional components you might point them in the right direction, at least for now, that people can start thinking about as they're approaching this.
So, a few things that I'd recommend. First is you need to know that the FAFSA looks at the second semester of the sophomore year in high school and the first semester of the junior year. So, if you miss that window, you're giving up scholarships. If you're past that window, it's not over for you. You've just given up scholarships. So, that's number one. The runway, the longer you have, just like retirement, right? The better you can pivot, the better success you will have. So now I want to give your listeners free resources, Kirk, because I've shared a lot of nuggets and they're now thinking, well, okay, maybe this is something we should talk about. So the first thing I'd encourage you to do is I have a checklist. Everybody loves a good checklist. You want to see, am I on track or am I not on track? And all you have to do is go to collegereadyplan.com/checklist. Doesn't cost you anything, doesn't commit you to anything. It is truly just to see my gift to help you to see, am I missing anything? Then if you're like, you know what, I'm kind of curious. I have two best-selling books on Amazon. One of them is How to Send Your Student to College Without Losing Your Mind or Your Money. And I think all listeners would benefit from that best-selling book. And it's on sale for your listeners for 99 cents. So again, trying to keep the cost of college down. And then if they're like, you know what? I need my kid and my husband or my wife or whomever, my kids to hear this. Schedule time with me. I'm happy to share with you what you can be doing right now, wherever you're at, by going to collegereadyplan.info. So it gives you so many different ways. I know everybody approaches this uniquely. And lastly, for those financial savvy people, make sure you do your student aid index. You can do it right now. You don't have to wait till tomorrow. You don't have to wait on anybody or anything. Every family needs to know this number. It is what colleges think you should be able to pay. I've never had a family say, yes, I'm so excited to pay that amount. But it gives us a starting place where we can help you to lower your student aid index to increase more money. So just know there are things you can do just as tax code teaches you with a CPA. Don't leave this up to your young child. They have no idea how much 100,000 or more is going to cost. Please help them understand that there are opportunities. And that's why I do these podcasts. So if you have any questions, please reach out.
Awesome. Well, Shelly, I really appreciate you coming to the show and sharing your wisdom with us. We'll definitely have you back on the future because college is not going away. It's only going to change. So thank you again for joining us.
It's been my pleasure, Kirk. Thank you.
Hey, Doug, did you hear? We're giving away free money. Well, I'll tell you about it in a minute, but before I do, there's a saying in the mining community, well, precious metals mining, that is. The saying is that if you want the best deals, you have to be in the room. Now, you're probably thinking, What does it mean to be in the room? Well, I'll tell you. Being in the room means that you're on the short list of people who get invited to be a part of the best deals. These are the deals that most investors will never have access to. You mean like IPOs? Nope, IPOs are chump change. Those are for retail investors, small potatoes. That's nothing compared to these deals. These deals would have you salivating to get access to them. Once you know they exist, you will never look at investing the same way again. I almost don't want to even tell you that they exist because it will ruin your thinking of how the investing world really works. Now, you might be excited that these deals exist, but you only have access to the deals if you're an insider, or in the room as they call it. Now, as loyal listeners to the show, I'm going to give you a chance to be in the room. Money Tree Investing Podcast has created the Insiders Club. This is a community of our show's members who are loyal listeners of the show and want to get more out of their investing experience. Being a part of the Insiders Club gives you insider status for upcoming events and webinars, discounts, free stuff and books, and influence on the future direction of the show. This is a great opportunity to join us as we expand our content and services. Oh, and did I mention free money? Yes, in the next few weeks, I'll be giving away free money to our members of the Insiders Club as my appreciation for listening to the show. Now, there's no cost to join the Insiders Club. Just go to moneytreepodcast.com/free money today to join the community. That's www.moneytreepodcast.com/free money. I hope to see you in the room. All right. Well, I appreciate Shellee coming on the show, sharing her wisdom with us. Now we're into the panel portion of the show where we have our very own Barb Freeberg. Hey, Barb.
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you. And we also have our very own Phil Weiss. Hey, Phil.
Hey, Kirk. Hey, Barb. Happy to be here as well.
All right. Well, let's dive right in. So, Barb, what were some of your takeaways from the interview?
I thought Shellee covered the arena very, very well. But I think there's one issue that is glaring, and that actually occurred with myself and my daughter, which is what about the students that are late maturers? They don't mature until they're, in their mid-20s and really don't have a grasp on what they want to do. Now, I was fortunate. I chose an economics major, which had so many applications, and went on to get a couple of master's degrees and figured out my path on the way. But I don't know if any kind of college planning in high school would have really made any difference for me. And my daughter surprised me last month by saying, Mom, I think I should have taken a gap year. Now she's in a big career and doing great, but I'm like, okay, well, you probably should have.
Yeah. And Phil, what about you? What are some of your insights?
I thought it was a really interesting interview because I thought she came about this whole thing from a different perspective than a lot of other people do, because it wasn't all about the financial side. It was also about, I mean, obviously it is financial, but she looked at things in a different way. And I love what you just said, Barb, because I always say to myself, like, it's so unfair that we tell somebody that's 18 years old that you're supposed to decide what to do for the rest of your life. And I remember when it was time for me to go to school, I thought I was going to medical school when I entered college. And so I picked Duke because I thought I had the best chance to get into medical school. And one of my good friends thought about Duke, but he wanted to study accounting, and Duke doesn't offer an accounting degree. And so when I left Duke and then decided I was going back to school and studying accounting, I had to go someplace else because they didn't even offer the degree that I wanted, because they wanted you to go on and get your MBA. But there's things like that too that we just don't think about. And Barb, you're so right. I say it all the time, when you're 18 years old, you've got so much of your life left ahead of you. You haven't thought about anything, you haven't experienced anything, and now you're supposed to tell us what you want to do with the rest of your life. It just doesn't seem fair in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, you guys bring up some good points. And much like Barb feels fortunate to get an economics degree. Unfortunately, also got an economics degree. I don't feel as fortunate as Barb did. But I think along the lines of this line of thinking, I think it's challenging. Students are forced to make one of the biggest financial decisions of their life and they do it at 18, or actually they do it at 16 because they have to start at 16 and then 17 and then 18, and it's like you're forced to make the decision and your brain's not fully formed. Like, how are you supposed to make good quality decisions at that age when you can't even drive a car at that age? Like, most people don't know what they want to do. I mean, I went to college. I always knew I wanted to get into business, but that was it. Like, and I went to a liberal arts college. The closest thing they had was economics, and that was I might as well have got a degree in philosophy because economics isn't. There's a lot of hard science in there. It's a lot of guesstimates. But I think you know there's it's very challenging for a lot of people. Most people, in my estimation, don't know what they want to be when they grow up. They might have some sense. Like, I knew I wanted to get into business. That was it. That's the most I knew. Um, you know, and so I didn't have a choice of business. I had a choice of economics or nothing, or English or something. And I think there's a lot of different challenges. So one challenge is most people don't know what they want to do when they grow up. Even after they're out of college. Isn't that why they go to grad school? Because they want to get a major in something they actually know what they're doing. So why do we send kids to college? Like, what's the point? If all you're doing is just getting people set up to start working so they can figure it out later, what's the point, right? But I also think about, if you made this point, Phil, about going to Duke, and well, they don't have accounting. I, I also find this interesting because how do you know? Let's say you go to a college and you're like, oh crap, I realize I want to do this. Now you got to switch schools. That's not easy. Like applying to school the first time is hard. You're gonna do it again? Like that's not easy. On top of that, you've got the fact that like any Ivy League school, they're all liberal arts, right? Like why are you going to an Ivy League school? Because of the name. It's not because they're teaching you better classes. I mean, you could argue maybe they are, but I'd say it's six and one half dozen the other. I have a bunch of friends who went to Harvard, and I always ask the question like, is Harvard great because the people went there, or are the people great because the school is good at teaching? And my conclusion is just because smart people go there. The teaching isn't any better than other schools necessarily. They just happen to have smarter kids who go there because everyone's trying to compete for the top spot at these Ivy League schools to get in. So you're going to a school for liberal arts. You're not majoring. People are competitive and smart for sure, and it's. I'm sure there's many reasons why you'd go to an Ivy League school, but when you think about the complexity of this, you're trying to do this as an 18-year-old or a 17-year-old. You're trying to make these decisions. Everyone thinks, well, if I just go to the best school, I'll get in. Yeah, but what if you go to the best school and you major in philosophy and you really want to get into business? You got to go back to grad school. I mean, you went to the top school in the country, but now you have to go more schooling. I mean, it kind of gets into this challenge of we just got to spend more money. We'll throw money at the problem and that'll make it better. We don't have apprenticeships anymore. We just have colleges, which arguably maybe aren't teaching the right thing nowadays. But, what happened to apprenticeships? You just apprentice under somebody and you learn that way. What happened to that? I think that would be a better way to go about it than spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a big party. So I don't know. I know I'm being somewhat hyperbolic, but I think there's a lot of truth in that. So, I mean, what are your thoughts, Barb? I mean, when these kids, I mean, you got a degree in economics, you and I both did, and it seemed to have helped you in where you wanted to go. But, how can people approach this differently?
I have thought about this a lot. All of my degrees, I also have two master's degrees, one in counseling and I have an MBA. All of them were from public universities. My husband and my daughter each did their undergraduate in private universities. But the real problem is, unless you have a student that is supremely motivated or extremely, extremely smart and knows they're going to an Ivy League, because my belief is if you could get into an Ivy League, that's really the gold standard. And it's great to try and get a degree from an Ivy League because it kind of puts you at a leg up even out the gate. But if you're not one of those people that is going to be there, then I think you really want to think creatively. And some of us do not or did not have parents that are going to shepherd us along and take us to a counselor and all of that. Kirk, you and I are kind of aligned on this in that I'm not opposed to having a student do a couple of years at a community college. They can figure out what they want to do, and you are not breaking the bank. I also think Shellee's idea of doing volunteer work and community service is brilliant because I tried a lot of different paths before I found the ultimate thing that I liked the most. And I didn't really find that until I was actually quite older. I mean, my first job after I got my master's in counseling was at a university as a career counselor. And that was great for a time, but not for the long haul. So, my advice to someone facing these types of decisions is really be conscious of your pocketbook. If you're going to take out a loan, really think long and hard about the alternatives or ways you can pay for college without a loan, which include taking some online classes or going to a community college and spending some time doing part-time jobs and or volunteer work in a variety of different settings. And finally, do some informational interviewing. And this is a process where you call someone up in a field and you say, can I meet with you for 10 minutes? I want to learn a little bit more about what you do. I'm trying to determine my career and I need to gain more information.
Yeah, I think that's a smart way to do it. I mean, I think about Boston, which has way more colleges than we should. And Northeastern actually makes this a part of their curriculum. It's a forced internship. I think it's their third year. They require you to take an internship, or I forget if there's like an extra year baked in, but basically it's a required part of the curriculum is doing an internship. Um, I think internships are great. I think they should be mandatory for any college student. I think the challenge is no one wants interns because before you could get interns for free and it was fine because you didn't have to pay them, but you just spend your time. So it was more like it was pro bono work basically. The problem was you'd spend like 3 months training them and then they're off and they're doing something else. And it's like, well, I just wasted all that time. What am I doing? So it's this chicken and egg problem. And I think there really needs to be a better solution baked into college curriculum to get kids ready for school. Internships are great. The kids definitely should be paid, but they also should be forced to stick it out for at least a year, as like a normal employee would. You need to stick it out for a period of time to make it worth it for the employer. Why would I have to pay you and you're not a functioning member of our company? You're just here and you're helping, but you're not really helping. I've done a lot of internships in the past, and my biggest gripe is that they're here for 3 months in the summer and then they leave. And they're ready by the end of 3 months and then they leave. It's like, well, why am I doing this? Like I'm wasting my time. And I love giving back, but at the end of the day, I love giving back, but I also would rather them stick around. Like, because otherwise it's just kind of like I'm just having conversations with them, which is fine. But I think there should be a better structure of this built in, rather than college curriculum, which arguably is some of it is let's just say mediocre at best. Like requiring people take rocks for jocks kind of classes. I think is what they called it in Trinity. It was geology. There was like two classes: the geology and the physics of flight. Oddly enough, that was also a rocks for jocks kind of class. I mean, they were interesting, but no, people went there because it was easy. So maybe there should be a different construct in colleges to make them more valuable rather than just academically. What are some of your thoughts, Phil? What do you think people can be doing?
So I have to push back on a couple of things first. So first, when we talk about differences between schools, as I said, I started at Duke and then I went to Rutgers, which is where I got my degree. And even though Duke didn't offer accounting degrees, they did offer accounting courses. And I started my accounting at Duke. And when I got to Rutgers, it took till halfway in the year till we got to the material that I had already finished at Duke because we covered more. Class time was the same, but just more was expected of you. I even remember I took statistics as a psychology major, and I went to Rutgers. I want credit for it. I said, you can't have credit. It was psychology. And I said, hold on. And I gave him my notebook that had all my notes from the class. They took one look and said, oh, you can have credit. It's not a problem. So there are differences that you can see from school to school. I also have to push back a little bit on community college because I have a niece. She wanted to be an engineer and she started at community college. She did community college and then she went to a regular college. She wasn't prepared at all. She flunked out of the college and she's not gotten a degree at all. So it wasn't a good experience. Just saying it doesn't work for everybody. I guess it may depend upon your major. She wanted to do engineering, which is I know is a hard major because one of my sons just finished this month and got his engineering degree. But it doesn't always work for everybody because again, there's differences in what the material is and how much that prepares you for where you go. Uh, this is such a big question for so many families that you work with when they have kids. Right? Like I had one couple that they had one daughter and they said, it's okay, she can go to school anywhere she wants. Well, her parents were from California. They now live in DC. And she decided she wanted to go to the University of Southern California, which, despite what many people think, is not a private school, not a public school, it's private. And when they found out what the cost was, which is over $90,000 a year, they're like, Phil, how are we going to pay for this? And I'm like, it's a little late now. Unfortunately, his father was in position to help them because they were trying to figure out what loans and everything else because they think that's a lot of times parents do that and they don't think about the consequences. So as advisors, it's important that we have these kind of conversations with our kids. I can speak to the benefit of internships, and even better co-ops. My son that just graduated, the reason he graduated a semester late is because he was not in school for one semester because he worked full time in a co-op. And then he did two internships with the same company. So by the time he was done, I mean, he did real work and get real experience. So he did go back. And I will tell you that as a accounting person, like accounting firms did a good job of having things for interns to do. But I'll tell you, when did my internship, I was working, if you think about like the housing collapse of 2008 and the collateralized mortgage obligations, the work that I did during my internship was we were reviewing the documentation for the mortgages that made up CMOs. This was before that collapse. And it was something that had to happen. I had to pull an all-nighter. Like I wasn't supposed to do that, but we did. I ended up sleeping a couple hours. It was back when the World Trade Center still existed. And that's where we were working out of. And they ended up giving me free Nick tickets because they felt guilty about the fact that they kept me there all night. But you can get good experience. I think a lot of that depends on the value of the experience and how it is, and whether or not it's just kind of they're there, like you said, Kirk, or whether they get something out of it and you get something out of them being there is how well the company is set up for it. But it's hard as an employer, right? You have somebody for 3 months, they learn some things to do, and then all of a sudden they're gone. But I think the key point for us as advisors is this is such an important topic that we have to talk about with our clients when they have kids that are pre-college, right? To start to prepare. Because I have one client who, when we first started, she's like, oh, it's only going to be $15,000 a year. That's all I need to put away. And I kept saying, no, no, no. And by the time her kids graduated, she had a lot more, but then she did a lot of work. She worked with somebody like Doug who could help her find schools that fit the academic and financial profile of her kids and the family, because it's such an important thing to try to match that up.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I remember in college, I was considering computer science versus economics, and I potentially even double major, but they required you to take two levels of calculus, and I had taken one level of calculus in high school, and I went to a very difficult high school. Um, but I went for the first level of calculus in the college, and I was like, wow, like like I needed help in high school to get through it. Like we a lot of extra help and sitting helping through it. It was not easy. I was like, I go through two level lists to do computer science. Like, no thanks. And plus, it required a lot of hours debugging in front of a computer, which in college, I would rather go out with my buddies than sit around debugging for 8 hours. So, but it was interesting. It was interesting major, but I think the challenge. I mean, as you're both kind of pointing out, the challenge is complex. I think if colleges were cheaper, the challenges would be maybe a little easier. But when you get into these majors, like you mentioned, engineering, engineering requires a certain skill set, right? And it's not for everybody. And if you're getting into college with a certain thing in mind, I don't know much about community colleges. I know that from a cost perspective, it can make sense. If you're, I don't know what the costs are for community college, but let's say it's $5,000 to go to community college versus $90,000 to go to a private university. And you could take 2 years of community college and then maybe get some of those credits transferred to college. You save yourself some money. The question is, you getting the same quality education? I don't know. I guess it depends on the teachers. I know I went to Trinity College. I know my college is expensive, and at the same time, I I think they gave great education? I wouldn't say it was great. Some teachers were good, but a lot of them were, say, mailing it in. Easy to do when you got a big classroom of 100 people. They just kind of mail it in. You can tell. But anyway, I think the college experience is complicated. I think there needs to be some redesign. I remember back, it was Obama's the one to change this. So it was prior to Obama. The internships were kind of an end run around kind of employment, having to employ people. And when he was president, they passed a law that would not allow students to intern for free, which I thought was a travesty. I thought that was terrible because I used to get a lot of internship requests, maybe like 100 a year. And as soon as they passed that law, I maybe get one or two. And it wasn't the students, it was the college. The college was like, well, it's unpaid, you can't do that. And then they just didn't send anybody. And the thing is the rule changed, which required you to pay unless you get credit. If you get credit, you don't have to pay them. But the law changed, which required employers to pay them, which means all employers are paying them, which means I had to compete with that. And the kids really wanted the money. They didn't really want the education. So it got really hard. So we just stopped doing it. The quality went really far down. So we stopped doing it. And I think even though it changed the rules, I mean, before people were paying Goldman Sachs money to become interns at Goldman Sachs. Like there was a thing, this is before Obama changed the rules, where it was like every summer, the, the uppity ups would compete for their kids to get an internship at Goldman so much that they would actually pay them to get an internship at Goldman. Because if you got an internship at Goldman, your path was paved. So they'd actually pay to get these internships. And the kids would sit around all summer and like lick the bathroom floor clean, like just some stupid stuff that they would make them do, like pledging, like pledging in college. It was that bad. But, it was designed to see like, are you cut out for this? And I'm not saying it's right. I'm not judging either way because I don't think what they were doing was the right thing. But there needs to be a redesign. And I don't have an answer, but we really need to relook at this whole process because there needs to be some way that kids can actually learn a profession. They can, apprenticeship at a profession that they're really interested in getting, or there's some sort of a process where they can experiment with different professions, right? And I don't know what the answer is. I really don't. But there needs to be something where kids can actually learn this. Because I'll give you an example. There was a time when I was in high school, I was interested in psychology. I've just always been interested. And one of the reasons I decided not to go down that road is because I didn't like the construct of the profession. I liked understanding people better and really, getting inside people's minds and understanding people. But I had no interest in the profession as a whole, so I didn't go that route. But when I went to college, they didn't give me any idea of what I'd be doing. They're just like, "Oh, here's study these cases." So I think there needs to be some application of the profession to some of these kids in college so they can really get it. You know, it's kind of like getting in the legal field, right? You go to law school. When you graduate law school, you don't know how to be an attorney. Like they don't teach you how to be an attorney in law school. They teach you how to basically how to do case studies and how to understand and research the cases. But they don't teach you how to be an attorney. You have to learn that on the job. And so I think even though that's a very distinct profession which requires that, I think you know, people need to really understand what they're in for, because if you're going through all this effort, like being an attorney, you have to go through law school, you have to go through college, you have to study for the bar. What if you decide you hate it? It's too late. You just wasted a bunch of years of your life. So I think our educational institutions need to do a better job at that, at helping uh, young adults figure out the direction that they're going and help not just having them study stuff, but actually practical application, which I think is not something that I experienced in the college atmosphere. So, so Barb, before we kind of wrap it up, what are some final thoughts you think people should be thinking about when they're looking for college, and you know, how can people make better use of the experience?
One of the best things that a young person can do, starting really at age 15, is to start volunteering at different type of environments. For example, I got my daughter volunteering at the Boys and Girls Club at 15 because she wasn't legally able to work. She volunteered at the state governor's office when she was that age and gained a ton of experience. Personally, when I was 16, I started working. I have worked for an interior designer. I have worked for the city public recreation system, worked for my dad in a business setting. And so that helps you define the things you like, the things you don't like, and if the things you like are going to lead to a job. Because Kirk, you hit on something really important, is you like psychology, but you don't want to be a psychologist. I love design. I love home decorating. I don't want to be a decorator. Okay, so the more you can do a variety of different activities, talk to people in different fields, different professions, to learn what's involved, the better suited you'll be to kind of figure out what's your next step. And finally, do not stress. Don't feel like I've got to make a decision that's going to last my entire life. Most people have more than one career throughout their entire lives. And you can change careers. You can change college majors and change directions throughout your life. I'm Barbara Friedberg. You can find me at Barbara Friedberg Personal Finance and on my YouTube channel, Barbara Friedberg.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on, Barb. And Phil, final thoughts from you.
So a couple things. In addition to volunteering, you can also take a gap year. You don't have to go right to school. I guess I could say my gap year was in between, right? I went to Duke for 3 years and I took 2 years off. Then I went back and finished. But I'll tell you that when I went back to school, it was very different. Like I looked at my classmates and I had friends there. It wasn't like we weren't friends, but if I looked at where they were and where I was, it was very different places because I came in with different experience. And I knew at that point what it was that I wanted to do when I finished school. I mean, I guess they probably did too, but not in the same way because I hadn't been out there. So there's some experiences you can get. And Barb talked about volunteering. That helps in two ways. It may help you find some things that interest you, but also, you know, applying to college has changed so much from the way that it used to be. Right? I mean, when I did it, you had to use a typewriter and send in an application, and you only send in a limited number because it took a long time. Now there's a common app and it's all on the computer, and kids can apply to 20 schools. I know I have a nephew that I think he applied to even more than that. And so now the acceptance rate at schools are so low because so many people apply. And so one of the ways you can separate yourself is by volunteering and having other experiences. I know Duke has a program for alumni families. And so I've taken all my kids there. And one of the parts of that process is you get 3 applications and you have to decide one kid is admitted, one kid is waitlisted, and one kid is denied. And when you look at it, they all have good grades, right? Where do they separate themselves? It's usually in all those extracurricular activities and things like that. So those are important because they help you figure out what you want to do. They can also help you get into the school that you want. But also the other thing, and I remember one of the first prospects I talked to, her daughter was choosing between 2 schools and 2 professions. And there's a big difference in the cost. And she told her daughter that if you want to study accounting, you can go to the more expensive school. If you want to study art history or whatever the other one was, you have to go to the cheaper school because she was looking at what the prospects were for her professionally when she finished school. So that's something else that we can consider. I mean, there's just so many things that come into play in this decision. It is very hard, and the schools don't make it easy. And if you look at the schools, that there's so many more applications, but they haven't changed the number of kids that get in. So your odds of getting in, like that's the other part. When you were talking about things that need to change, I think that's something else that needs to change when it comes to applying for college, is that if the schools are going to charge, the schools should charge less and let more kids in because it's so difficult to get into some of these schools. It's like it's beyond a competition, right? I mean, the elite schools, their acceptance rates are 5% or less. It's crazy how difficult it is to get into some of these schools. But no matter what you do, it's not a decision to make yourself. There are a lot of people that come at this with different levels of experience and different levels of understanding. It starts with your guidance counselor at school, but there's other people too. I mean, I know we did that for our kids, had them talk to somebody else to help them with the process and help them understand some of these things. There's so much, and it's a big financial decision, but it's also a big life decision. So just trying to be as informed as possible and don't be afraid to get help. I'm Phil Weiss. My firm is Apprise Wealth Management. I know experiencing big life transitions can be stressful. My job is to help empower women facing new beginnings with the financial knowledge and tools they need to make self-assured decisions. My firm's Apprise Wealth Management. We'd love to get to know you. You can visit our website at apprisewealth.com. That's APPRISE wealth.com. And you can go there and you can read and sign up for our weekly blog. Thanks for having me on today, Kirk.
Yeah, thanks for going on, Phil. Thank you both for joining us. That's the show for this week. Thank you again for joining us on Money Tree Investing Podcast. My name's Kirk Chisholm, Wealth Manager of Innovative Advisor Group. We don't just manage your wealth, we make your life better. You can find more about me at innovativewealth.com. And of course, you can find me every week here on this show. You can also check out our show at Money Tree Investing Podcast. On our website, you'll have access to the show notes, resources, and the archive shows. Please remember to subscribe on our YouTube channel for immediate access to the new shows when they're released. When you subscribe to the show, it allows us to get access to some of the top minds of investing in personal finance. While you're here, please leave a comment and question if you want us to address it on the show. Have a great week ahead, and remember, no one will care about your money like you do, so invest in your life.